Hi. Today I'm very excited because this is something I wanted to speak about for ages. Something I feel extremely passionate about on this path. It could probably even turn into a podcast, but I'll try to keep it video length. I'm not sure how long this is gonna turn out because I feel there's just so much to say about that. Especially when you go through a spiritual awakening, you will get to the point where you have to think about these things. And let's see. This is totally freestyle as always. I haven't prepared anything. This is just from my experience, from a heartfelt desire to share this with you, because I know that many of you on the path make the same experience. So what I'm talking about today is on a spiritual awakening journey, a beautiful byproduct is the way we relate to what we call reality and how that changes. And what people take, normally as reality, and how that's being questioned on a path like that. And then at the same time, how we, for example, look at systems and structures that are in place on this planet that so many people on Earth take for normal, buy into, and how a path like this doesn't really allow for that much longer. So what I'm speaking about today is a term that's like widely used in the spiritual community nowadays, and that's the matrix. I also call it the illusion. The thing that's not real, artificial construct, and the so necessary unplugging from that false illusory thing that many of us have to undergo on a path like that. So I'm basically talking about unplugging from the matrix during a spiritual awakening, and I gotta kind of catch my breath because it makes me just so worked up talking about it, because it's something that I find so fundamental and so essential for actually the destiny of humanity. So when humanity really wants to shift, first of all in consciousness, but also in the way we live on this planet, this unplugging has to happen first. And I'm sure so many of you can relate to what I'm speaking about today. So what do I mean by when I use the term matrix? The matrix to me is a system and established structures that exist since millennia on this planet, that human beings have bought into, taken for reality, not questioned, have been actually hijacked by. And within those structures and systems, we find a force of control, hierarchy, patriarchal energy, and usually those structures make humans live in some sort of fear state. So, for example, this is not foreign to you. Structures like religion, governments, banking systems, school system, even university, food industry, corporate, the working world, the 9-to-5 slavery. The list is long. I probably could list a lot here, but you get the idea. So this is what seems to make up the structure, sort of organizational structure of this planet. And when we look at these, I forgot to mention the medical system, also very important one. And when we look at all these structures that people take as for normal, what is the one thing that all of those have in common? It's a force outside of yourself, usually masculine or patriarchal energy, that tells human beings what's good for them. So the government that tells you that the vaccine is good for you because it keeps you healthy. The school system that tells you that you need to take these lessons because then you will be wiser. In religion, the God that is outside of you keeps an eye on you and judges you and makes a decision whether you go to heaven or hell. You get the idea. It's a force that's outside of us, that knows better than we do and acts in our best interest. This is basically the illusion, the fantasy. Or in the medical industry, the doctor who's been through like don't get me wrong, it all has its place. There are amazing doctors out there. This is not like bashing medical stuff or anything. This is just like someone tells you what's good for you because they have been through some sort of brainwashing and repeated stuff, instead of like, feeling. It's basically a system we live in of disempowerment, disconnecting people from their intuitive, what Credo Mudwa calls the mother mind, where we rest in the pelvic area and live from intuition. So this structure in society only ever rests here in the mental masculine mind, and it wants us to operate from there, and it acts with a force of control, so that human beings mostly live in fear and that they don't have any power within them because someone else obviously knows better. So that's the basic idea of my definition of what the Matrix is, or the 9-to-5 slavery work environment where you've done it for so long so you don't even question it in your little office cubics thing, It's like structures that are in place that human beings consent to because they just seem to be normal. Okay, so you get the idea of my definition. So what is so important for the evolution of humanity is that we start to recognize these dysfunctions. We could now go back ages and we could now explore, okay, what are the origins of these structures? What is the origin of these systems? And that's something that I have a notion about, but there wouldn't be enough space in this video to do that also. But there are origins, of course, to these systems, but I think this is specifically about unplugging through an awakening. So we're gonna stay there. So so the most important thing is to recognize these structures first of all, and that they are acting not in the best interest for a sovereign, healthy, developed, independent human being that knows themselves. But wait a minute, this is what awakening is all about, isn't it? Knowing thyself. So we live in a world where these structures obviously don't want that you become this sovereign individual with integrity, living from the mother mind, the pelvic area. So we have to learn to discern, we have to know what's going on. We're not buying everything, we're not consenting to everything. The problem is here that most people, especially the ones who do not experience an awakening, most people on this planet, they're having too much fun in the fantasy. So the system is set up to reward you. An example is the university professor who doesn't truly speak his mind or his truth because he's receiving a paycheck from the university and just keeps doing what people before him repeated and the curriculum says and what science says, because he's rewarded by the paycheck, so he keeps his wisdom for himself. A good example for that is Richard Alpert, Ramdas, the discovery of psychedelics for himself within the Harvard University setting. It's like the system is set up to reward individuals. So what people fear is, when I do not consent, when I do not participate in this any longer, what happens then to me? I might stand alone, I might, amazing example was the COVID era, where literally employers threatened people if they didn't get their vaccinations, then they would lose their jobs. This is like, whenever you sense something like that in the air, we have to pressure you to make you do something, then you cannot consent here, no matter what the consequence is. And that brings me to a key element of this whole unplugging is, we need to drop the fear of the consequences of no longer consenting, or the criticism that a parent might face when they don't send their child to the toxic school system, where the children are being brainwashed and they start bullying each other because no one wants to be there. It's like, why is there so much hostility within schools? Because kids are made to do something they don't want to do. It's not fun for most of them. At least it wasn't for me and for many other people I know. So then you look into alternative conscious ways like homeschooling. You might receive some criticism, and then all of a sudden you stand alone. So we human beings need to drop in order to become really sovereign and to really long-term take these old, toxic, outdated, actually harmful systems down. We need to stop consenting. We need to stop having too much fun in the fantasy. We need to come up with alternatives. We need to face our fear of maybe being ridiculed by the masses. And we need, Jesus is the best example for that. Someone who followed his truth and paid for that even with his life, if you believe in the story of Jesus, which doesn't have anything to do with religion, by the way, because it was only a result of these forces that they took that story and made it into religion. So don't even need to go there, but I felt it was important to mention it. But yeah, it's like this, what is true for you and where do you participate still out of fear? You know, where does something not feel good to you for a long time and you still do it because it's considered being normal? And those are the important micro decisions. Or another great example, the food industry. You know, human minds are so conditioned with what we think is good for us, what we take into our bodies, you know, the nice and shiny wrappers that we're sold, and then there's like the poison inside of the food, or it's always this energy, something is being sold as being good for you, but it's actually not. So for example, the energy drink will keep you working better in your 9-to-5 job. And then people drink the energy drink. It's like these things. It has to be refined to the like smallest decision in life. And I'm not saying that we're all becoming saints tomorrow because of that. It's just that we have to learn to discern what this game is about and take the power back. Human beings have to take their power back. And imagine if every human being on earth was able to see through these manipulations. They wouldn't work any longer. They wouldn't have any chance, you know. Like the classic example of, imagine it was war and no one showed up. No war would ever have taken place in human history. So this is really what I mean by even if it means that I might experience a little bit more discomfort for a while in my life by feeling like an alienated outcast, or like I'm being criticized, or I'm being laughed at, or I'm not receiving maybe that paycheck, or you know, maybe I have to find a different way to live or to raise my children. This has to be more important to you than the consequences that the Matrix would threaten you with. And that's the unplugging. Imagine what a world we would live in if every human being did that. Makes me emotional thinking about that. So, and especially on a spiritual awakening path, I find that it's basically crushing this fantasy in the first place. And it's also stopping you from having too much fun in this fantasy, because it just doesn't align anymore with what you know is true for yourself. So I would even go as far as saying spiritual awakening comes with unplugging sooner or later. And don't get me wrong, we can't just, you know, snip with the finger and then we have established 5D reality on Earth tomorrow. It's gonna be a very gradual process. And yes, I'm still paying an electricity bill here by using this phone which I'm charging, or I'm still using an online platform like YouTube, which is greatly hijacked. If you watch the YouTube ads recently, it's really weird. So start to recognize the hijack, no longer consent, make conscious decisions for yourself and people close to you, for all humanity. And then humanity really has a chance. That was so important for me to share today. And especially, I think Kundalini in itself is a very loving but also very destructive force. When you have awakening with Kundalini, it will erase everything from your energy system that no longer serves you. But so it does that with your perception. You will then probably walk through the world and, okay, I see some sort of something here that doesn't resonate. Wait a minute, what's going on here? That doesn't resonate, so I'm not doing it. And I would be so curious for your own experiences. I would be delighted to hear about what you feel about, your unplugging process from the Matrix system. And I'm not going into origin story today. That's completely a podcast for itself, but that was a fundamentally important topic for today. And you're always welcome to share something in the comment section. Sending you lots of love. Namaste.